So yeah, my name's Adam Rush. I'm very happy to be here talking on behalf of work done by the governance parameters working group, which is part of the parameters committee. So back in December, we basically were charged with the task of reviewing the governance parameters for CIP 1694 and looking at how we could set the initial settings for the network when voluntary governance came online. And it was hard because what we had was some spreadsheets and some results from the CIP 1694 workshops that have been conducted the year before, and they were all over the place. And they had done their best to put together like a comprehensive analysis of them, but there was just so much variation between the community's ideas and where people thought things should go, and the difference is that the way the host asked the questions, that we kind of used that as a starting off point, and we really wanted to get back to talking with the community about, well, what do you guys think about it now? Because as we went through this entire process of talking about CIP 674, making sure the community understood it, asking and answering questions and coming up with new questions, it really evolved as we went. And so it was time to take a fresh look. And so we started a series of discussions on the Cardano forums across X. We had several X spaces, and then we pulled in Riley Kilgore, my colleague from the Summit platform, also helped build a custom polling front end that could be used with Summit platform to ask the community to, hey, connect your wallet and give us input, vote with stake, and tell us what you think that some of these parameters should be. And so what I want to do now is, and so here I have the names of the members of the working group, and it was a great experience working with these folks from across different communities of Cardano across the world, and sort of talk through what some of the governance actions are now that that you will come across when you're wanting to do governance on Cardano, and what those thresholds are that we came up with the settings for after discussion with the community, and also very importantly, discussions with the full parameters committee. Because the parameters committee is a group of subject matter experts that is works under the technical steering committee. And so the job of the parameters committee and the working groups under it, as part of it, is to be that sort of technical review layer. So if like the question comes up, should we change it? They can get together, look at the research, talk to the community, be that review layer, and then come back and say, well, for this case, it was what should be the results that we tell the hard fork working group to put in the initial settings. But from now on, what it's going to be is here's a report that you all can read when you, the D-reps, vote on this. Because from now on, once we do Chang +1, it's going to be the D-reps, the SPOs, and Constitutional Committee members who will be determining these parameters going forward. Going through the governance actions that might come up when looking at a governance on Cardano blockchain. First, the primary governance action, the one that when I say primary, I mean the one that has the ultimate privileges, is the motion of no confidence. If the ADA holders believe that the Constitutional Committee is not doing its job, they can vacate the Constitutional Committee with a vote of no confidence. And if this passes, it will override all other governance actions that have been proposed and pass first, and vacate all those governance actions as well that the Constitutional Committee may have voted on in that APOC. And so this motion of no confidence governance action, after a lot of discussion, we decided that we needed to have a 67% threshold for DREPs. We felt that was important to have that supermajority because this is a decision that should not be taken lightly. The Constitution is in place to make sure that there are basic rights, basic rules of the road that everybody kind of agrees to before they submit governance actions. And the CC is supposed to basically veto a governance action if it doesn't fall within that parameter. But if the CC is not doing their job, we do need to have a mechanism for getting rid of them. And you'll notice that for all of these actions, SPOs are set at 51%. And the reason for that is because we don't know how many SPOs are going to show up yet. And we've had feedback from SPOs saying, first, well, I just want to produce blocks. I don't want to be involved in politics because they associate governance with politics. And so if they take that attitude, they might not vote. And if they don't vote, it doesn't contribute to that threshold of 51%. And I'll get a little bit more nuance on that later. But second, there's also SPOs that are run by centralized exchanges and other large financial institutions. And so someone like Binance, they might say, well, I'll be an SPO because I need to get block rewards. I need to get the epoch rewards for my customers. That's my fiduciary responsibility. But I am not going to touch governance because that would put me regulatorily at risk. The US government, the SEC might come after me. And so they've indicated a lot of these large exchanges have said that they don't want to do governance because they don't feel like they can. So for now, we just say 51% of SPOs, and when we say 51% and 67%, of course, we mean of the representatives that hold stake. So, Cardano is a proof of stake system. So if one person has 1 million ADA stake and the other person has 1,000 ADA stake, it's weighed accordingly when they vote. All right, so I'll skip over the technical details for the sake of time, since I know that we are going through this. All right, so the next action action that has preference in the system is the update committee. So this is if you want to update the Constitutional Committee and add members to the Constitutional Committee or replace the ones that you just vacated. And so for this one, we said that we feel like, there's a difference. So on one hand, you might be trying to add members to the Constitutional Committee when it's just the system's running normally. You just want to add members. In that case, under normal conditions, we said the D-reps 67% because we should have a 2/3 majority, because that's a pretty serious thing. You're adding people. We want to have a lot of discussion, but we lowered the value for motion of no confidence. Some people found, and we said, if the system is in a state of no confidence, and if the D-reps have voted no confidence on the Constitutional Committee and kicked them all out, the governance of Cardano cannot go forward until the Constitutional Committee has been set again. And so we lowered it to 60% for the reason that we said the system needs to get back online, right? And so maybe you have 67% of people agree the Constitutional Committee has to go, but you can't get 67% of people to agree on who should take over again. Okay, well, let's at least, maybe not a simple majority, maybe we're not going to say 51%, but we are going to say at least 60% to ease that up a little bit, so that if there is a strong majority consensus on who should be in the Constitutional Committee again, we can move forward. We can have a functioning governance system again.
Now, this is one of the only odd ones that has that 60%, correct?
I would say it's one of the odd ones where we kind of have like a divergence within the same framework. Yeah.
It's not a supermajority.
Right. Yeah. We have like certain categories, and so we call the 60% the strong majority category. Yeah. Go ahead.
Adam, I just have to ask.
Yeah.
Like if the Constitution Committee gets the vote of no confidence, you're saying all decisions that they have made in that term would be vacated?
All decisions that have not yet become effective. Yeah. So right. Each governance action has a lifetime of $60.
Okay.
So
right. They do good work for a year, and then evil.
No, that's all good. I know that's good. That's a good differentiation, because this is part of the permissionless of the blockchain and the immutability of the blockchain. If a governance action has been enacted, there's no going back on it. It's on the blockchain. You can't take it back. But if there has been a vote where we say, should we pass the Cardano budget and should we withdraw some money for something, and the CC all votes and says, yes, we should withdraw money for that purpose, but then the D-reps look at that and say, holy cow, that is completely unconstitutional. You guys never should have approved that because you're giving money away to some sort of inside cabal. So instead of us approving the budget, we're going to go ahead and do motion of no confidence to kick you all out. And so what would happen is now the fact that the CC has passed a treasury withdrawal, that gets vacated because the D-reps did not pass that treasury withdrawal. So that particular governance action was never fully ratified. And the fact that the CC has it ratified on their end is now moot because that CC just got kicked off, and that governance action is now expired, and it goes off the chain until a new C. And then once a new CC comes back, people will have to resubmit their governance actions.
But the CC says, yes, that's constitutional. The DREPs say, no, we're not passing it.
Right. I mean, it could be that the DREPs just decide not to pass it,
Yeah.
and then it doesn't pass. I'm talking about an extreme situation. Motions of no confidence are an extreme situation.
But that's also why they get rushed, right? So like, if
Right, exactly.
motion of no confidence is passed, all of the stuff that the CC said is constitutional, that the DREPs haven't voted on, that is all tabled.
That's right. That's why the motion of no confidence is such an extreme option that it basically stops all governance until a new CC is put in place, and then governance actions can start to be submitted again. It's basically the reset button. All right. Now, let's say that we want to have a new constitution. We've decided, we've gone to Buenos Aires, we have come up with a draft constitution. We want to have this draft constitution replace the interim constitution. Everybody's happy with it, and we want to put it on chain. We're going to have to get 75% of DREPs to agree to it. So 75% of the governance stake held by DREPs needs to vote to approve that new constitution. We really felt that the constitution should not be taken lightly. This is something that will be binding on anyone who wants to submit the governance action. And then the existing constitutional committee must also vote a supermajority to approve it as well. Because they might say, hey, you elected us to oversee the Constitution. Now you're trying to change the Constitution. We can't agree to uphold this new Constitution you all have come up with. So if they vote no on it, they can block the new Constitution from taking effect. Now, what would be the response? If 75% of the reps want a new Constitution and the Constitutional Committee votes it down, no confidence, right? You get where I'm coming from. And then you replace the Constitutional Committee, and then you pass a new Constitution. But these are checks and balances. So we have a guarantee that the Constitutional Committee will agree that they will uphold the Constitution, and the new Constitution is passed by a mandate majority of stake. You have to have 75% of the governance stake agree to this, but through the DREPs. So that's just a really strong indication that the Cardano community agrees. I'll do it first.
When you talk about DREPs 75%, you are talking about voting power or
Yes.
number of DREPs?
Voting power.
Voting
Yes.
power.
Yes.
So we could say that sometimes we have just 30% of the DREPs.
That's true. It could be that there is a small number of individuals with an outsized amount of voting power who vote to approve something. And if that's the case, I encourage you all to change your DREP delegation. Calling it open.
So, sorry, nerd question. Is that an integer or a float on the 67%? Because if you have 4 out of 6, that's 66.666%.
Let's talk more later.
Yeah.
All right. So action 4, hard fork initiation. All 3 branches of the governance system must agree to hard fork initiation. Again, SPOs need 51%. DREPs need 60%, a mandate majority to agree, and the Constitutional Committee needs to have a supermajority, 67%. Now, there's one more trick. In our Constitution, I believe it's also in the interim Constitution guardrails. I know it's in the draft Constitution guardrails that we're talking about. The Constitutional Committee must go and look at the on-chain the adoption of software, node software by the SPOs. So we realized that, hey, we can't count on the fact that Binance is going to vote. So instead, we're going to have the Constitutional Committee have a responsibility to look at what version of software is running, and when they produce a block, what does the header say? Does it say they're using the new version of software that they are ready for the hard fork? So that's one of the guardrails in the Constitution. So that's a place where the Constitution can help to guide something like a hard fork initiation. But again, we have this separation of powers where everybody has to agree to it. It has to be a strong percentage. Protocol parameters, update governance action. So this is like, what if we want to change these parameters that I'm talking about, right? What if we want to change them and have different values? Well, the Constitution Committee has to agree by 67%, again, supermajority. The DREPs for network, economic, and technical group, they all have to be also supermajority, 67%. So, cool. Now there's one outlier there, the governance group. That is, do you want to change the threshold for changing the Constitution? Well, we better make sure that that threshold for changing the Constitution is the same percentage as changing the Constitution, so somebody doesn't try to do an end run and change the threshold and then change the Constitution. So that's 75%. Oh, and SPOs also have to do, there's also some of these parameters within the network economic and technical governance are designated as security parameters, and we also ask the SPOs to input on those as well. All right, and then treasury withdrawal. Again, DREPs and CC members, 2/3. So you have to have a supermajority of these two branches agree. The DREPs have to look at it and say, is this a good idea? So if the DREPs think it's a good idea, they can vote on it and vote to withdraw things from the budget. The Constitutional Committee can only judge things by the Constitution. That is in CIP 6094. So they do not look at this and say, I think it is awful that Shaggy is going to get 100,000 ADA to run a marketing campaign. I'm going to vote against it. Jenny cannot veto Shaggy for that reason. She must say, well, I don't want Shaggy to get that ADA to run a marketing campaign, but I am bound by the fact that I'm a Constitutional Committee member, so I have to vote yes, it is constitutional. So that is how this looks, and there is also a provision within the Constitution that says it also has to be within the budget. So we have that as well. That's what also another thing Constitutional Committee looks at is has the community agreed upon the budget? Yeah. Well then, you better make sure that nobody's trying to draw more out than the budget allows for that category. And yeah, go ahead. Jerry, go ahead.
So two questions. You kind of touched on one of them. So is there either constitutionally or in the guardrails, like on the actual ledger, limits to how much can be withdrawn at any one time?
Not at this time.
Okay, but it can be. I mean, it can be either through the Constitution or through.
It can be limited within the Constitution. Yes.
Okay, because I want to just
right
the entire treasury.
Yeah, I mean, that's a hot topic of debate.
Are you familiar with like the budget committee working on something like that?
Yeah, so there's going to be a net change limit, which is essentially what we're saying.
Okay.
How much can be withdrawn in a given period from the treasury?
Right.
That will be defined in the Constitution. It's not a parameter, I don't believe.
Right.
On change.
But it's something that we do plan to have in the draft.
Yeah.
In the guardrails in the draft.
It can be made from the ledger as well if you want.
It could.
It
It would have to be another parameter. We'd have to add that parameter to the
That
way.
way, correct.
Ledger. Yeah.
I have another question. So say the SBOs indeed don't want to participate in governance. Is there a way for them to delegate their kind of SBO power to a DREP?
We'll get to that.
Okay, great.
All right, so info actions, or as we like to call it on X, nice poll. An info action is something that does not affect the blockchain. So an info action can only pass if it receives 100% from everyone, which is not going to happen. So basically what info actions do is use it to gauge sentiment. So you can say, should we name the next hard fork Hosky hard fork? That was governance action number 1. And then people can say yes, no, and Constitutional Committee has to say is or is not constitutional, or they can abstain. So that is how, that's what the info action does. Now, the info action can be used, according to the Constitution, for things like, hey, let's have a budget, and let's have a vote on the budget and see if people agree with this budget that we're proposing. And then the Constitutional Committee agrees that if whatever this poll, this on-chain info action says, for people agreeing to the budget, that will be the budget for the next year. And we will only pass treasury withdrawals if they fit within this budget based on this info action. So they can have nuanced rules that the Constitutional Committee can take advantage of, but it doesn't actually change the blockchain, which is fine. It allows us a nice tool for that purpose. But DREPs, SPOs, and CC members can all vote on it or not vote on it, and it just is on the blockchain for 6 epochs, unless everybody votes 100%, and then it would expire from the blockchain. But the chance of everybody voting yes 100% is not, it's impossible. And so that's basically it. Now, there is one addition that's very exciting that we just got through talking with between the parameters committee, the technical steering committee, the ledger team, and that is we did find a way to give SPOs the power to auto abstain or auto no confidence. So SPOs, when they vote with their poll keys. And so they are not able within the system to say, I'm going to have this SPO be my SPO voter, or I'm going to have this DREP be my SPO voter. But what they can do is they can take their reward wallet for where their block rewards go, and they can set their reward wallet to be either auto abstain or auto no confidence option. And if they do one of those two things, the ledger software will look at that and say, okay, this pool is auto abstain, so therefore I will count every vote with the exception of hard fork, because we do want input on that. Every vote except for hard fork will be auto abstain as the SPO. So that's kind of our little workaround because it would take too much work to build in the options to allow programmatic voting for the SPOs on chain. But it was a really nice way to come up with that solution. So we do now have auto abstain for SPOs, so we can tell Binance and the rest that they can do that. So that's all I have. I don't think I have time for more questions, but if you want to hit me up afterwards, we can talk more about this and get more into the weeds. And we also have a report that you can read. So thank you very much.